Earlier this week, I turned 55. Yeah, it's an amazing number. I just wanted to talk about how I got to this point in my life with all that's going on. I guess I want to start with a few years ago, I had a conversation with my mom, and we were talking about class reunions, and she said she'd never been to one at her high school, nor would she ever associate with anything to do with their high school. And as we were talking, she was explaining to me how bad during desegregation, the high school was just a melting pot of hate. She was constantly tormented. Not only her, but all the students of color, black students, were tormented daily, before, during, and on the way on the buses going home. And I look at that, and I was wondering, some of the choices that she made, but later on in life, and how that situation and that experience didn't scar her in a way that affected and perpetuated into my life. And I think about that, and I think about when you meet my mom, the first thing you see is her beauty. The second thing you see is her strength in getting to know her, and very charismatic. Early in my life, we moved from Kansas City to Denver. Denver was a great place. Lived around a lot of people that are almost every color was represented. And as my parents continued to grow and wanted to have a limitless life, promotion brought them to Nebraska. And what I know now, it's just overwhelming to believe that the choices they would make. When my mom was in school, and it's been 2 years, it's my second birthday without her. And when my mom was, when they moved to Omaha, they easily could have moved to an area that was comfortable and predominantly filled with people that looked like them, but they didn't. They moved to a place that they can afford. They wanted the best that they can afford. That's what they constantly, they still live that way. And we moved to a place called Millard, Nebraska. And why I say this is that there's an element that believes during this time that you don't have to say anything. It's not important to say anything. I don't think that's true. And I think back now, knowing the experience my mom had, and my dad also, but my mom had, why would you move in an area where I would, less than a generation, 20 years later, and have the possibility that I would have the same experience that you had? But if you knew my mom, you would know that wasn't even in the equation. She never lived by fear, intimidation. Maybe back then she wouldn't be able to stand up for herself, because doing that could just exacerbate the situation, because it was environmental, it was a culture. So her standing up for herself only would have exacerbated the situation. It was never some sort of authority or staff or anybody like that would have done anything about it. And so I want to talk about my experience. And so we moved to a place that predominantly white, and she never gave me those history lessons of herself. I just heard generally through our family, and I knew from my personal experiences what those things are. But growing up in Millard, somebody had to say something, because I grew up in a time where, and I'm speaking for myself, there were so few black families or people that looked like me that I knew all of them. Dupree's, Parks, Yeagers, Devans, there was just a handful of us, Boyles, I knew them all. But what I didn't experience is what my mom's experience was. And I truly believe is because I don't believe that they had a meeting before we got there. that there's going to be people here that look different than you, and we can't act the same that we always have been. I don't believe that. I believe that there was people of character before that knew right or wrong, that wasn't thinking about political affiliations. They knew what right and wrong were. So when my mom was being tormented and teachers did nothing, one of the first teachers that I'm still associated with today is Karen Ellis. She was at my grade school. I don't believe that they had to speak to any of these kids to tell them that a new kid was coming into school. I think they just had that kind of character, because I saw it happen over and over through my high school years. I don't know if this is the experience for the other people that I went to school with, but I'm just telling you, this was mine. People had to stand up. People had to say something. Was there? Do I think there was racism in Miller? Of course I think there was. But I think that there was people that when it was surfacing, somebody said something so it wouldn't take hold and grow. That's how this happens. Nobody says something. They don't say anything. They look away. But I had a Karen Ellis in my life, and I didn't need to be protected. Some of the best friends I have today are from that grade school, from my junior high. And let me tell you the one time that I show you what's important, that you don't have to be 30, 40, or 50 or somebody strong to speak up when you see an injustice. Whether it's against people that don't look like you, don't believe like you, don't have the same sexual orientation as you. And so I was, three-way calling was new in that time. And I was talking with a friend of mine, and I was telling him about this girl I had a crush on. And he goes, why don't I just call her up and ask her? He calls her up, not knowing that I was on the phone as like in 8th grade. And the first thing she said was, who? He's an N-word. And I froze. But my friend didn't freeze. And my friend's not on social media, but this guy's name was Greg Slovo. And it was a turning point in my life. One that I realized that just people that didn't look like me had my back also. And also, if something's wrong, I needed to speak up right then. And that's been my experience, that I have to speak up, that I can't look away from these things, injustice, inequality, bullying, any of those kind of things. So I look back and I realized that I had the ability to do what my mom and father wouldn't do without repercussions. Speak up for myself. A friend of mine, I went to a protest a couple of weeks ago, and one of my friends told me that he's stood with me, which kind of meant a lot to me. But I knew that because those are the same friends that I've always had. And when those things would come up, there's racial things that come up just in general conversation, especially with kids. But what happens is somebody would always say something, or there would be a silence to correct that situation. They would never laugh it off. They would never pretend they didn't hear it. That's what perpetuates that kind of behavior. When you don't nip insanity in the bud, it just grows. And that's what I believe racism is. It's an act of insanity based out of fear. And so when you think that there's not important, or it's not your issue, it is your issue. It is, whether you know me or not, it is your issue. Because it tells you what kind of character you have. I think about my friends today, and I'm standing on the shoulders of all my family and relatives that made a way for me to have this conversation today. I'm standing on their shoulders. And then I just want to thank those that came outside of themselves to do what's right. And I don't even think that they never asked to do it. I don't think they wanted to do these things. I think they just knew they had to. One of the things is There's a couple of ladies that I refer to as mom because they're more than just Mrs. to me. You know, one of them is Karen Ellis, and the other one is Carol Leach. Those people emulated the kind of person my mom wanted me to be. They emulated those kind of things. So when I wasn't around my mom getting those directions, I got it from those types of people that did not look like me. I'm truly grateful for that. You know, I see classmates today that they come from a very upward mobile kind of background, but yet they're so socially conscious even before this. It's unbelievable to me. It brings me to tears to believe that I wasn't imagining these things, that they are good people. And it's not good people that have to do things, but if something's wrong, say something. That's all I'm asking. If something's wrong, say something. If you don't know what's wrong, if you're not confused with what it is, use complex thinking. What does an 8th grader knew that something was wrong, but a 40, 30, 40, or 50-year-old doesn't? I don't get that. That's not acceptable to me. You know, so I just wanted to thank all the people of my family that gave me an opportunity to have that chance to have those things. You know, one of the things that I think about is that my son wanted to stay in college in Arizona when this pandemic started, and one of the things is he's a strong, young, and smart man, but number two, there's a couple of families that are really close to me that I trust them with my son. They don't have to prove anything or say anything. It's been proven already. You know, and nobody else has to prove anything. My kids went to a high school that basically emulated the same thing. They had a culture of those kind of things were not accepted. And I appreciate the coaches, teachers that have been in my kids' lives, because I can't protect them from everything. It's a collective thing that helps us. When they talk about a village, they mean everybody. Not the ones that you have to debate on or try to justify their significance. But if you know me and know my experience or understand my experience, yes, I've had a great experience. But I'm not the only one. My cousins, family, and friends have not had the experience. Their experiences are closer to what my mom had. So that's what I'm fighting for. That's what I want. I want them to prove that what I experienced 40 years ago, when I was 13 and 14, 40 years ago. They want to see that now, 40 years later. That I could live on my merits only, that I could be judged by the things that I do. I can make bonehead mistakes, and it's not immediately deferred to for my color or any other things. You know, I just want to thank you for the time for listening. This is really hard and difficult for me, but it needed to be said. And those people that needed to be thanked, and those that are guilty feel guilty, maybe it's a spurring, just something to think about. But those that know me and have stood by me all these years, I thank you. I thank you so much. And my family and friends that are struggling and suffering, I love you. And I want to tell you what's possible. And I thank you for your time.